Good morning. How you guys doing? Or good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are or whenever you're watching this. I am Sarah Me, and this is Sew Live, where I just sew with you whatever I'm working on, whatever you guys suggest, and I try to be as instructional as possible. I may not always follow the directions exactly how they do it, not because I'm a rebel, but just because I just tend to go to the next step of how I think of it happening. So you can always stop me and say, hey, wait a minute, that's not how the directions are. And then tell me to back up or repeat something or do it again. So welcome. And I'm continuing on with this pajama thing. Sorry I missed last Saturday. It is, just in case you don't know, I'm in the campfire area of California. I was not affected by the fire, but lots of people around me were, including my own family. So I'm trying to do as much for that as possible. And it's the holidays. I have a teenager, and I have a business named Chicken Boots. So there's that as well. So I definitely tend to get busy, and I kept forgetting to take the fabric out of the dryer last week and bring it to work so I could cut it out, even though I was ahead of the game. I had my plan. I still forgot. So sorry about that. I just couldn't go back home and get it on Friday once I realized that happened, because I also have a puppy right now, which I did not plan on having. And I'm on puppy time. It's like being on toddler time all over again. So I had to take the puppy to the vet and get his initial checkup and everything, and I didn't have time to go get the fabric. Hello, Carol. How's it going? So welcome. Thanks for joining. And let's see here. So first of all, I want to go over the fact that a few weeks ago, we all decided we were going to do a sew-along in January, and we just did it spur of the moment. We decided it in stream. Everyone is welcome. It'll be really casual. I will sew it live, and I'll probably break it down into a lot of steps so that everyone can kind of go at their own pace and ask questions in between so that we don't get too far ahead or behind. And we are going to do these pull-on jeans. Yes, pull-on. Hello, Ida. Hi, Brooke. Yes, puppy time. Brooke's just happy she's not on puppy time anymore a little bit. I know she misses those puppies, but I got the puppy from her. So she has plenty to keep her busy as well. So anyway, we're going to do these. I know nothing about itch-to-stitch patterns. I've never sewn one, so I'm really looking forward to them. They look really nice. I like her catalog of patterns. I feel like they're interesting. They look like they fit her well, the model, so that's appealing. And they look really well thought out. So I looked over the pattern when I got it, and it looks great. I got an amazing email from Christy, so I imagine she'll join soon because she always comes on her lunch break. And I'm sorry, Christy, I haven't gotten to reply yet. I love it when you guys email me. Like I said, excuse me, at the beginning, I am on a lot of different things going on here. So, and I really wanted to look at all the parts of her email, but she actually had some really great tips about this. So, yes, you were on double puppy time. Yeah, and I got the mellow one. So it sounds like, because the other one got named Busy. That's literally her name is Busy. And mine got named Loki. So, and I call him Lolo. So he's really cute. So anyway, we're going to be doing these pull-on jeans. So there's no fly zipper, which for better or worse, that might appeal to some of you for the sewing aspect of these, although you know how to sew a fly. I've got that great video for you guys. But I feel like the complication of them being pull-on pants makes the fabric selection really important. And so I'm going to delve into that a little bit, and then I'll come up with hopefully a little bit of information, and I'll email it to the newsletter so that you have it and when you go to buy fabric. And we're going to do this sometime in January. It's not strict. All those things I listed I have going on. I have more than that going on. I have a show to prepare for. I don't have production help right now. And I am actually potentially going to be moving my office, but not by then. So I'm going to do that kind of slowly, So But everything is going to lead to more of the stream. I'm working on that more and more. I probably going to have to back off a bit of it in order to get through a lot of these hoops that I need to jump through right now. And I hope you'll forgive me, but you know, by spring, hopefully we'll be back at this really well. And if you opened your newsletter recently, you got the closet organizer pattern. I hope a few of you will try it out and then let me know how it goes. I worked really hard on it, and there's videos to walk you through it. So I feel like you got a lot of tools, and you can always ask me a question. So anyway, we're going to be doing this in January. I think she has a special on her site. I can't remember what it was. I feel like maybe it's a shipping special. Maybe it's just a discount on multiple patterns. I can't remember. I got this on the Thanksgiving weekend because one of you mentioned it. It was on sale. There's a seam on the back leg. I'm going to look at that. I'm not a big fan of having a seam on my back leg. So I'm going to see if I can tape the pattern pieces together and get rid of the seam, and I'll let you know. I keep turning it over like I'm going to see the back of the pants or something. So yeah, you can see this back seam. I mean, you know, Christy, yes. Hey, Christy, I don't know if you heard me, but I got your email. It's awesome. I'm sorry I haven't replied to it. I love everything you wrote in there, so I'll definitely reply really soon. I'm just like, I've got a lot going on right now. You're welcome, you guys. Yeah, I plan on doing more free patterns and more patterns so that we can all sew together. I really, 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 really enjoy making patterns. I don't really enjoy making it look graphically beautiful because it's not my skill set. I like doing that. I just feel like I don't do it very well. You know what I mean? Like I struggle with it, and then I kind of get, you know, like the pattern, no problem for me. All the specs, no problem. The sewing instructions, I can do all of that. And trying to make sewing instructions that are more home sewer friendly rather than factory friendly, because you'll see I'm a little bit clipped in my instructions, and I realize this is not understandable to some people. So any feedback is helpful. I'm hoping the video will help. Yes, exactly, Christy. Yes. So, Christy, I loved your little dog sweater you posted on Instagram. I'm totally going to do that for my little pug. He really needs slippers. As he comes back to bed, his little feet are so cold sometimes in the morning. So yeah, I do plan on doing more patterns, and I feel like this one did. Hello, Tiffany. How's it going? I feel like it turned out pretty good considering my graphic skill set, and I'm confident in the pattern and all the measurements and all that. So. All right, so let's see. This is our little sew along itch to stitch Mountain View pull on jeans. We'll do that in January sometime. And so you have time, but you do need to know that this is a download only pattern, and you have to have it printed. Christy, I discovered that same company for pattern printing. It was $1.20 to print out this whole pattern. The catch for me, pretty sure it was the same company. If not, I'll check it out. The catch, the one I found, is that you have to have like a $7.98 minimum order, and I didn't have any other patterns to print, so I started like shopping patterns. I'm like, oh my gosh, this has created a crazy thing for me. So I did figure out I had a few seam work patterns to print because those are also digital, and I'm going to ask a friend locally to see if she has anything to print, and then I can get them all done at the same time. Otherwise, there's Pattern-Z, which is a UK-based company. I really just want to keep it as close to home as possible. And then I have a pattern drafter friend who runs a business doing grading and marking. She used to do a lot of my really big prints for me when I used to have 70-inch wide pattern plots. And I was going to ask her if she would do this for people as well, because she's in California. So it's another aspect. She used to charge me $9 for a pattern plot and a digital nested set of patterns. So I can see where she's at with that. So anyway, I'm going to try and make you guys set up to do this really easily. And we'll get into a routine, right? So these PDF downloads aren't such a pain in the butt. Yeah, when I searched print sewing PDF pattern, it was kind of down the page a little bit because you have to get past all the blog posts on how to do it. Yeah, it's pdfplotting.com. That's exactly it. Okay. Yeah, you need about 4 patterns to print to make their minimum. So, Brooke, I could print 2 because I know you ordered this, right? Or if you email me yours, I could print yours and then mail them to you. So then we make the minimum because I know where you live. So, yeah, that's a potential. So anyway, So anyway, we're going to be doing the Carolyn Pajama top. So last week, was that last Thursday? Wow. Last Thursday, I made the pants in the floral print. And because remember, I had the top that I made using the Rita shirt dress pattern as a shirt. And then I was like, oh, these look like pajamas. So then I needed matching pajama bottoms. So I made these. So I do have a matching set of pajamas. The shirt is from the Rita shirt dress pattern. And the bottoms is from the Closet Case Carolyn Pajama. Yeah, exactly. $1.50, $2. It's exactly. And then $8 for shipping. So it is a really good deal as long as you have a lot of. You use them too, Carol? Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how it should be. The crazy thing is I actually have one of those plotters, printers, here in my office. It's just not hooked up to my computer, and I really need to figure that out. Like, I was going to sell it, and now I'm like, maybe I should just keep this. I have so much paper still, and apparently people still use this one. It's old, though. You know, it's an HP Design Jet, so I don't even know how to hook it up. Like, the cord it comes with, it doesn't even, like, no one uses those anymore, you know, so I got to figure out how to do it. So we're going to make the top today. It's not going to be in floral because I don't need that. So I made a pair of pajama bottoms yesterday, and I whipped these together. Like, this is definitely not my finest sewing hour. I bought this fabric to make a vest, and so I barely had enough to make the, oh, good, Carol, the plaid match. So it matches somewhat, you know, like that's actually pretty good. And then I didn't even have enough for the pockets, so I used floral for the pockets and the little tie. Still has the little fake fly. I did the waistband a little differently where I sewed this as a unit and then I put right sides together to the waist, stitched around, serged it, and then I top stitched it down. So a little differently than how I did the other one where I clean finished it by starting from the inside of the waist, coming to the outside, and then edge stitching it. And then I had to do a wider cuff because I didn't have enough length, but that's closer to the actual pattern. And so, yeah, it's a little wonky. Like, I was rushing last night to get out of here and finish these. I thought, you know what? If I don't sew this right now, I'm never going to sew these matching bottoms. But yesterday, I was pretty productive for the first time in a while. I made pajama bottoms. I finished a little tiny quilt. I made 2 pillowcases for the campfire survivors. And I cut out my top. Wait, I said something else. What was it? I can't even remember what I sewed. It's been kind of busy. I'm looking over there. Oh, well. Anyway, it was done. So here we go. My first step, so this is the top I'm making. The only modification I did was I shortened it. I will say that I cut out the size 12 top, but for the pants, I cut out the 16 and they fit really well. And this is the same person who makes the ginger jeans, and I'm pretty sure I'm wearing a size 10 in their ginger jeans. So just note that if you make these, that you might just check the finished measurements and compare your size. So because, you know, I was a little like, oh, cut it size 16. I'm not usually a size 16, but measurements don't lie. So that's what I went with. All right, so I have my little pocket, and I'm going to be doing a fake piping. So there's not going to be any cording in the piping, just flat bias. Look, I even made a little collar miniature yesterday. Can you see that? I don't know what it is. You guys saw me struggle with this collar the second time I sewed it because I couldn't remember the steps, and I started confusing 2 different ways to sew it together, and it was a nightmare. So just know that looking at that Rita shirt dress. What was that at the end of? It was at the end of another. I sewed at the end, of the making backpack. So part 2 of the making backpack. At the end, I took the Rita shirt dress pattern and made it into a jammy top. And then I sewed it together, and you guys were all laughing at me because I could not remember how to sew that stinking collar together, and I had just sewn it the week before, so it happens. So I did a little practice because I was like, I'm not going to do this time. They're not going to laugh at me. But I'm going to show you how I sew my binding together to get a continuous loop because I feel like it's a really great little primer on it. So I really want a nice long continuous strip of this binding because I already cut the binding, and I'm going to put a video up on cutting the binding. There used to be one on my website, and I took it down because I'm trying to clean up that page. So when you sew this together in a one long strip, you want two pieces that are cut identical, and that is the two you're going to seam together. It seems very counter, like you think there's no way that that's going to make a nice straight line, right? Because sometimes when we sew it together, we get this by accident. I'm sure you've done that before. I have. So you want these two pieces, just flip one over, right sides together, and then you're going to sew where they intersect, right there. So then you'll get a nice smooth line. If you were to sew this together, maybe starting like, hope you can see this. If you were to start like in between this intersection and the raw edge, like right here, I'll show you what'll happen. Because you need to sew that intersection, that's the seam line. I always talk about sewing on the seam line, not anywhere else, right? So I'll show you, oops, I almost sewed it properly. I'll show you what happens if you don't sew it in the right spot. You're gonna get a jog. You see that? Because it's not sewn on the seam line. But if you do that, you can still correct it. So just sew it where it intersects. Like that. And see, now you get a nice continuous line. It's nicer if you just trim these little guys out of the way. And you can just like trim the corner like that. And see, now I have a nice continuous strip. So I'm just going to sew a few of those together so that we have them for the future stuff we're going to sew. So right sides together and then line it up at the seam line. And this is all stuff like, I kept doing it wrong, you know. I am not backpacking. I know you probably noticed that. If you're going to pull on it, I would recommend backpacking. So I'll backpack on this because I might be pulling on it a little bit. And you don't want it to separate because then you're just going to cause yourself more of an issue. I also usually like to coil this up as I go. I have like a little empty bias spool that I usually coil it up on, but you can just do it loosely. Just don't pull because you don't want it to get stretched out. And I kind of just keep it going like that. Usually if this end's the wrong end, the other end is the right end. It's pretty rare that it's not. But like this time it's not. And it's because of where that it, yeah, see this one isn't. So you know what you do? You should just fix it to be the right way. Like that. It's because when I cut this out, I didn't cut a full yard of it. I cut like a half a yard of fabric. And that means that, this is going to get a little complicated. It just means that when I was cutting diagonally across that half yard, you know, the half yard shaped like this, and I'm cutting across like this, when I get over to here, go past this corner, I get like one strip where both of them are the same way. I just encountered that so many times, I finally figured out, why does this do this? It drives me nuts. Okay. So you'll be happier if you coil it as you go. Trust me. This one's a little too short. I'm going to get rid of it because I have tons. I don't typically get rid of it even if it's too short because, you know, every little bit helps. And we have definitely been in plenty of pickles with binding where you just feel like you have all the binding in the world. Like if you could see the millions of yards of binding on my wall for chicken boots, you'd think you never run out of binding, and you do. We have definitely had to tell people we're really sorry. We just can't, like they beg us to make one more pattern holder in trees. We just don't have that binding, you know, and we have nothing to cut up. So every little bit kind of counts, and we keep scraps for a while. So this is probably going to be plenty for my pajamas. I'm gonna add one more really long one. And that's just because of the collar and lapel. It's got a long strip. You hardly need any for the pants. See, did I just find another one of those? Yeah, I just found another one of those. So I just cut it the opposite way. My hands are always so shaky at the beginning of the stream. Sorry. It's like I don't feel shaky, but I see them shaking. And I get so excited when I'm going to be with you guys. It's so funny. I don't know why. My hands are, I guess, betraying me. Okay, so. All right, I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to put this aside. I'm going to grab whatever fell. Because you know I'm going to need my seam ripper, right? I am going to do this with French seams. I didn't pre-serge anything. Okay, so this pocket has a little strip of bias on it, and the pieces look really similar. So I think like how it works is this one's folded in half like this. I have a little like spindle. I'm just going to put my bias on it back there so that it stays. And I'm just going to fold it in half. Mine's a little wide. I cut it at 1 3/8. The seam allowance is 1/2 inch though, so let's see where I'm at when I am here. We could also make this easier on ourselves by just folding this in half and sewing it. Just make sure you don't get any torquing. Should I do a bunch? It's so satisfying to sew. I'll do a bit of it. That way I'll have some for my collar as well. I was thinking about the stream schedule. I've been thinking about it for a while. I want it to be as convenient to as many as possible. However, I probably can't stream on Saturdays and Sundays. I really do need some weekend time. And having last Saturday off, I have to say it was my first Saturday off in a couple months. So it was kind of nice, I have to admit. Just because, you know, stuff gets done on the weekends. Like laundry and pulling your fabric out of the dryer, stuff like that. Okay, I'm going to put this... I'm going to line it up. I'm going to sew it at a 1/2 inch seam, and I'm going to see how much is going to poke out. So I think it'll actually be the amount I want. Yeah, that looks good. Set that aside. And I'm going to sew it right sides together. Ooh. Do I want a French seam on this? We could try. Let's try a French seam on here. I didn't really plan for it. It's kind of a weird thing to do a French seam on, I have to admit. Let's see if it works, though. I'm going to trim it down. I think I'm taking up too much seam allowance is my problem. Let's see. Oh, it's so thick. Could I do this? Can I do this? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do kind of a mock flat fell. So I'm just going to roll this up. It's just a pocket. It's a pocket on pajamas, you guys. So I don't mind like experimenting or doing something incorrectly when it's like that. I'm going to look at it on this side. That little stitch line, I don't know if you can see that. That is the stitch line of my trim to that. And so I'm just going to wrap this around the edge like that. It'll work just fine this way. And then at least I'll have a finished seam inside the pocket. Like that. That works. I'm going to top stitch it down. There you go. Nice and clean. It looks crooked though. What's going on there? Oh, my piping's sticking out a little bit taller on that side. But maybe when I fold it under, it'll look more straight. Or less. It looks less straight. Okay, I don't know. Like, should I fix that? Let's see. I have to do a lot of taking out to fix that. Let's see here. Oh, the chambray is like the worst fabric to remove because it's a really loose weave. I really love this fabric. You've seen me sew a lot of stuff in this fabric. It's a lining that I used for one of our fabric groups, but it was actually apparel chambray, like real chambray that, you know, you see shirts sewn out of. And I just keep making things out of it. I've made an Astor shirt out of it, and what else have I made out of it? Something else. Maybe I've just used it as like trim and piping. Okay, so I can correct this by just making that seam. Let's see, can I? I just want to make sure I don't get a crooked pocket. I can actually straighten that edge right there, so that's what I'm going to do. That's as much as I'm willing to go. But let's do the middle a little bit more. Because like now I have a little like hump there. I'm just laughing because like, you know, I thought I planned ahead, you know. I didn't think about the pocket. Pocket, that's easy. But I just made it super complicated, didn't I? Let's take out that. I can actually see some of my stitching there too. So this way I'll get rid of a little bit of that. There we go. Okay, that looks a little better. I admit it's not perfect, but hey, it's homemade. I'm going to try and fake it a little bit with my top stitching. That looks better, right? Just say yes, that looks better. You know, I feel like sewing is like math. You just, I mean, obviously there's a lot of math and numbers in sewing, but what I mean by that is always check your work, you know? Because that way you don't get into any trouble later on. And there's ways to check your work. All right, well, I've certainly stitched that seam enough that it's never going to come out. Get rid of these pattern pieces. And then let's put this on our shirt. This fabric shreds. Whew. There we go. It looks... Yeah, it would have bugged me. Well, I don't know, Brooke. Bugged me. I definitely have the ability to let certain things go. Like, it's a pajama top, you know? Maybe if I were wearing it out, yeah. It would have been definitely one of those, let me photograph this in a way that doesn't bug me. But I don't like covering up things like that for social media. I really like showing just how it looks, you know? Okay, so I marked my pocket placement. And I'm going to put this on this side. And I always know when I mark my pocket, it's where my pin went into the fabric, not where it came out. So I don't have to worry about that. It like the grain line is bugging me more than anything. Like it looks crooked. It actually visually does look crooked, but you know. Let's see if I can. I'm going to fold this. Just see if I can. Do you see that? That actually helps. I'm not like forcing it, I promise. Yeah, it's chambray. Yes, it is chambray. Yeah, so like the warp and the weft are two different colors. So see, like this is what makes it blue. And see I think it's, which way is the warp is I think this is the white one that goes selvage to selvage, and then the weft is the blue. So it has that kind of two-tone look. It's really lovely fabric. I got it from an actual fabric jobber too. Okay, so I like to just line up, center my pocket this way between my pins, like that. And then I just want to cover up the holes. That's just habit. You don't have to. Usually that little drill is on the interior of your pocket. So I just pin my pockets in the middle like this. And then I start upside down, fold it under, And I try and go as straight as possible. I like to do a little like triangle at the top there. Make sure it's nice and straight though. And I try and like encase that turn back part. That way I don't have any little pieces of the fabric threads kind of Wefco selvage. Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay, good. Phew. Wait. Really? I thought the warp was the... Okay, yeah, I believe you, Brooke. I haven't studied weaving in so long. But you know what I mean. The warp and the weft are different from each other. That's how you can get that effect on things like iridescence and things as well. Iridescent fabrics that have different color shifts when you look at them. I just lift it up and sink my needle into the corner on my own. What's going on there? Oh, look at that. What's that? Okay, well, it sorted itself out by the time it got past that, but I think my bobbin thread could have been caught on something. So we'll fix that in a second. I just changed the bobbin and everything, and all I'd sewn was the bias. Should have been enough, though. Okay, turn this under. Use my awl to poke these little bits in there. Always trying to get all those little bits in there so that the edges that unravel are totally encased. And it's less about your seam allowance on this as it is about making it as symmetrical as possible. So, you know, I'm going to use a little less on this side because I feel like that'll make it keep to that square shape. This is very thick right here, so it really wants to like poke out. Be careful, you might get a little rounded area here. You might want to poke in a little extra at that thick spot to compensate, because when you get to it, it might push out. So you see how this little thread wants to poke out? That's because of the notch. That's the fold line of the top of the pocket. It was a little notch there. So I'm going to push it in there, and I'm going to try and encase it with my triangle. I'm also going to go back and clip it a little bit. 1, 2, 3. 3 stitches. Yeah, maybe it wasn't 3. You don't have to do the triangle. I do that just in case you were going to use your pocket. It's just a habit. It helps the reduce the stress on the seam there. That's kind of cute. I'm still using the floral from last week, so I guess I can use this jammy top with those bottoms as well as these plaid. So, see, like, look, that's like a natural imperfection of the fabric right there. So, looks okay on this side, but there's other things on this side. It's really hard to tell the right from wrong side of this fabric. I might not even be able to in some cases. All right, let's see here. Let's sew our back shoulders together to our front. And I'm going to do French seams. There's so few seams to do on a shirt with French seams. It is a good one to do it on because it's really just the shoulders, side seams, and the armhole that you have to worry about. That's not bad, right? It's like a really, you know, palatable amount of double sewing. If you're going to have a palatable amount of double sewing. Wrong sides together, wrong sides together. So I do it a little bit less than a quarter. Oh, I ran out of bobbin. That's probably why I had that weird thing. And I forgot to go back and check my pocket. I was already winding another bobbin. I knew I was going to run out, so I got prepared. That's why my bobbin did that weird thing. I call it jammies too. Sorry, I can't grab the thread. I'm sorry, I just shouted into the mic because it's right next to me right now. Yeah, so I've been thinking about the schedule. I know Christy would like shorter streams so that she can see the whole thing, right? On your lunch break and stuff. I've been trying to do that. I get carried away though. Like sewing for me, I'm here a lot, so I don't even realize that it's been like 2 hours. So I am trying to do that. I have a lot of how-tos planned and shorter videos, kind of like some of the ones I've already uploaded. I have a list, and I've been thinking that if I scale back a little bit, maybe what I would do, just like temporarily scale back on scale, maybe stream once per week because of everything going on here. I would maybe do a how-to instead of the stream on Thursday and then live stream on Saturday, and maybe we could do just a little bit longer or something like that. Thought about that. I can stream later in the day on a weekday. That works as well, instead of this like 10 a.m. slot. I don't know why I picked 10 a.m. now. It might have been just because of the schedule. My daughter has a unique school schedule, so I have to be available to pick her up, but she's about to get her license. So that might free me up. You just never know. Yeah, right? I know, right? I would totally do that. I just can't even tell on this fabric. Sometimes I'll pin it or something. Yeah, but yeah, just chalking it. Smart. So when I usually sew my French seams, I would press the seam open and then press it along the fold right here. So I would press that seam open, then press it shut and along this edge, and then stitch it. Okay, so there's my front. That. I've got my instructions here because I want to try and stick to the instructions for you guys, just in case you're making these and I go in roughly the same order. So right now I've done the pocket, I've done the shoulders. I'm going to stay stitch the neckline, and then we're going to get this collar over with so I don't worry that I'm going to do it wrong again. So I think, okay, I don't think I actually did mark the, I thought I did. I sometimes wait to mark some of these things because I sometimes don't know if they're going to be like a slit into the fabric or if they're going to be just a lining up. And so right here is my dot. I just pin straight down, and I actually tear my tissue and pull my pin through like that. That's how I do it. How I was taught. I see a lot of people preserving their, so this seam allowance is a 1/2 inch. God, I hope it's a 1/2 inch. I read that it was a 1/2 inch, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is 5/8. You'll notice on the pattern I made, the closet organizer, I wrote the seam allowance like constantly because it is my pet peeve. See, look, I'm looking here. I wish the seam allowance was, sorry, closet case, but I just wish the seam allowance is right there. Yeah, it looks like it's 5/8. You're right. I've been doing a 1/2 inch. Probably stick with that because it's my natural thing. That adds 1/4 inch to a quarter inch. That'll make my thing a little bit bigger. I was at the top end of that finished measurement chart. So, and you know, am I that accurate when I'm doing my 1/2 inch seams on my French seams? Probably not. They probably are becoming a little bit of 5/8, up to 5/8. So that's what I would do. I would do when you do a 5/8 inch French seam, I would sew the first pass I would sew it 1/4, trim it down, and then sew it down, sew the other 3/8. They say to do the reverse. So sew your first one 3/8, trim it down to 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then sew 1/4 inch. Yeah. So I would do the smaller one first and then the larger one. But they have you do it the opposite. So it depends. I don't know what the logic is behind either one. I just know I feel like I have more room to adjust things if I do the first one smaller. And if I want to let it out and I want to use open one of my French seams, at least I have more leeway there. You know what I mean? I don't have to go all the way back. So that's kind of why I feel like it gives me more options. And I do like having options, obviously, because I sometimes don't follow the instructions. How's the lighting and everything, you guys? Is it okay? Looks like it's okay. I have the monitor at a really weird angle to me, so that so there's like kind of a glare on it. I can't really see it. All right, so I'm going to stay stitch this area here. I'm actually going to change my lengthen the length of my stitch a little narrower. Yeah, so okay, I'm just going to say if I had thought this through, I probably would have trimmed down the neckline to a 1/4 inch seam allowance. This is really hard to maneuver when it's 5/8 for me. But it's really common. And it's really good I have this little mark, because I probably would have accidentally sewed it at a 1/4 inch. That's just a lot. It makes your neckline, you're forced to clip. You should anyway, but it's a lot to clip. You're going to trim most of it off. So I just like to start with where it's going to end up. I don't know why I just backstitched there. Because your neckline isn't typically, oh thanks Christy. Yeah, I just pulled a picture of the paper. Your neckline isn't typically a place where you need the extra fabric for fitting issues. So I feel like having that seam allowance at a 1/4 inch is a good idea. I might even trim it. If I trim it off now, though, I have to trim it off on everything. So I'm just going to try and remember. You guys are going to remind me, right? So I got my stay stitch in there. Here's my collar pieces. I did use fusible interfacing on them. So I know this one is my under collar because it's got the seam. So now I remember also 5/8 inch seam. It's cut on the bias, so you got to be really careful sewing this seam right here that you don't get stretched out. I'm sorry my ring finger looks so terrible, you guys. I'm having some really serious issues with my wedding ring and me being compatible right now. It keeps healing and then it doesn't, so sorry. Okay, so there's my under collar seam. I think I need to stay stitch first. I'm going to follow the directions. Here we go. I even like numbered them. So on the top collar, yeah, stay stitch. And I stay stitch between the whole thing. So this is your back neckline right here. And then this is the front neckline. But at least I can get rid of these pins now. And it'll remind me to stick to that 5/8 inch seam. I'm going to put this one here. And this one here. It's really thick because of the interfacing. I feel like it's harder to be accurate with 5/8. I know that is how the world goes around though. Oops, wait. I want to keep going. Okay. Top collar. Okay, so then now it wants me to clip this between these back neck area, because this is going to get clean finished under your along your back neck. And like she says in the instructions, it is a little fiddly to sew one of these collars, but it's worth it so that you don't have to have a back neck facing, which is kind of nice. Back neck facings are nice in that they're easy to sew, but at the same time, they do tend to flip out if they're not sewn properly or cut on the grain or clipped properly, so they have their own sets of issues. I'm just going to get rid of these now. Now we're going to add our piping. Let's see, did I leave myself a long enough piece? Let's see. It goes to this, right? Yep, goes here. Let's just walk it around here. All right. It's a little stretchy, but I'm not going to stretch this very much because, oh yeah, that's not enough. Because this isn't pre-washed. The bias isn't pre-washed. I had a lot of this fabric that was pre-washed, but I ran out. And so it will shrink differently. It's going to shrink like this. So it would be nice if that didn't happen because I don't want my collar to draw up in a really weird way. I'm going to just pre-make my piping. If you put piping in here, it's not that hard. You just need to use your zipper foot and get right up against it. The key to making piping look really good, or cording, is making it really snug inside this initial bias casing. And it is kind of the part that gets a little tricky and finicky for people. But if you just take your time and just like look at each step as you go and evaluate it once you've sewn it, you can get a really nice effect. And it is a really good pattern to try it on. You know, better than like piping your entire couch or something, you know, for those ambitious people that are out there say, I'm going to upholster my whole couch, you know. I'm just going to do a bunch of this. So what I would do is I would prep my piping, and I would do like what I'm doing now. I put the cord in there, and I would actually get up to it almost all the way. I wouldn't do this first step with your piping in there as if it's your final step. Don't get it as snug as possible now, because that little first pass of stitching, it may show on the final garment. You can do that on your, when you attach it to, when you do your final stitch next to it, that's when you really snug it up. So if you can set yourself up to not have any issues with that by not stitching too close from the beginning. Just get it pretty close, because so it's not like loose and kind of wishy-washy in there and kind of trying to creep into the seam, because then you might have then you might catch the piping in your seam, you know, and that can happen. You probably won't notice it though once you've worn it a couple times. It's like I say, it's a great project to do it on because they're pajamas. We don't typically put piping in a lot of garments, you know. It is kind of reminiscent of pajamas. So, all right, so let's see. There's my undercollar. I'm going to, do I hang off? No, I don't have to hang off anything. They really want me to press this up, but I'm not going to press it up quite yet. I'm just going to stitch this on here. I'm going to stitch this right on top of the first stitching for now. Yeah, I don't really like that. I'm gonna take it out. I'm feeling like maybe I shouldn't have stitched it the first time, so that I didn't get that like flipping up there. Let's see. You know, actually, that might be okay. Actually, I think I might make it even looser. You just gotta, you know, try it out, right? So you see I'm talking about how it's like flipping up right now? So once the collar is sewn, this is going to be on the edge like this, but smaller amount. So actually, I do want that flip up to happen, but I think I'm going to do a little bit more. And when I clip it, it's going to want to behave a little bit better. So I'm going to keep this even a little bit looser. Let's see if my hunch is right. Because my instinct would be to like sew this kind of tight on there and get rid of that. But that actually might not do me any favors in the end. So I'm just going to really gently hold this, not pull it at all. And I'm not sewing it at the seam allowance either, so that's partly why it might do that too. Okay. A little bit of seam. Oops, I just pulled up my edge there. Get that thread down there. So I just, oh, there we go. I think that'll be okay. It'll be in my seam allowance. A little bit of my seam allowance flipped up and caught in the seam. All right, so let's see. We're already on, okay, top collar to under collar. I'm going to press this edge up now while it's a little easy. Like this. And I'm not going to trim it down. I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to press it right on my stay stitch line. Like this. So yeah, would you guys like a later stream on like Thursdays or like what are your feelings? Are you guys just used to this and this works? I've trained you well. I'm not feeling the need to change the stream time. Like, it works for me. I just was thinking, like, you know, it doesn't have to be at this time. You know, we can change it. Alrighty, let's see here. So now I'm going to do my top collar to my under collar. And then we attach the collar to the neck. I'm looking over my instructions here. And so this would be the step that you would sew as closely as possible to your piping if you've got it in there. Because you're going to, this is going to be your final seam going all the way around. And it doesn't look like you understitched this collar. So you don't have that like opportunity to go back and kind of make it. Or earlier, right, Ida? Okay. I don't know if I can get in here earlier. I get here by 9 and it's a stretch to get here by 9 because I have to drop someone off then. But it's good to know that, you know, yeah, like doing an earlier stream. That's possible. One of these days, that's probably possible. We could start early because it's pretty late for you, isn't it? Right? But then the gal from Australia, like it's 5 in the morning for her right now. Yeah, I know, Christy. Thanks. Yeah, I'm going to try and, like, I think, like, I'll have a better understanding. Also, coming up with enough content to sew twice a week is tricky. So I'm trying to slow down. Because if I could do shorter streams then if I slow down a little bit, too, you know, which would be one of the things I think that is appealing for people. Not sitting here for hours, right? All right, let me get onto it so I'm not sitting here for hours. I'm just browsing the instructions here. Yeah, I don't know why this is just like a regular collar. I don't know why it always throws me off. That little, it's the non-distinct corner throws me off. All right, so I'm going to sew this from the other side. I'm going to get rid of all these pins because I have the other side as a guide now. I'm going to sew this from the other side because I can see my stitching from this side, you know? And I can feel my cord in there trying to pop up. That's okay. I'm going to start on this side. Line it up. Get rid of this. I don't want that to get folded, so I'm just going to kind of try and use it in there. This fabric that I'm using for the binding is a little bit, I don't want to say heavy, but it is pretty stout. It's really nice cotton. Okay, I'm going to mark my center. I'll mark my center so I have a guide here to line up to the back, center back neck here. You could use pins. Feel free to use pins, you know. I definitely don't use as many as some people. There's nothing wrong with using pins at all. I do feel like they make me a little bit inaccurate sometimes and slow me down. And sometimes I feel like being able to be nice and smooth in my sewing without stopping to take out pins helps my seam, because I do tend to get little jogs in my lines of stitching that aren't very smooth. Since this one has the interfacing, the stitching, the piping on it, it's a little more fixed, right? So this one here is much whooshier. It's got so much play in it. So I am trying to tell it, hey, you're gonna be with this guy. You guys are now buddies. So you guys need to like get along and nest together right off the bat. Once I'm done here, I'm gonna go back and look at my seam allowance. Because like right here, I feel like I got a little shy. And that would just be really obvious in my piping. This is the one thing, like that piping can really damn you. You can really make it. I'm gonna look in the inside, see how close to the edge mine is. Like look at that. See, I have a little tuck right there. So I'm looking now, I'm checking my math, right? Some places it's a little wider. I'll probably let it go in some places, but those corners are kind of important. So this corner here, I need to fix that right there. You see that? And we can just look inside here and see what happens. So it's just like folded on itself, that's all. Understandable. But it is where I stitched twice. I think like doing something like these types of these decorative stitches and edges, I do feel like a little bit shorter of a seam, shorter of a stitch length, I should say, might make it look a little more polished. And I'll tell you why. The longer the stitch length, think about it like between each, where the needle goes in on each side, that's fabric in there that can kind of move and scrunch together, and there's play in there. You know, like the longer the stitch, you can kind of see it from the outside, right? And when it's tight, the seam looks really nice and finished. That being said, it's harder to take out. So a lot of beginning sewers, I'll see, they will do really tight lengths of their stitches at first because they're so paranoid that their seam is going to fall apart. They're so worried their garment's going to fall apart. I think I remember feeling that way too. Like it's kind of a miracle that you can sew something together and it's going to stay, you know? And getting used to the fact that you can trust the sewing machine and the stitching and understanding like that, like when have you seen a garment fall apart? Like it just doesn't happen ever, you know? Like maybe if you forgot your bobbin and you didn't notice it and it's still stuck together, but that'd be a miracle anyway and worthy of note. So, okay, so see here how it folded right there? I'm just gonna press that like that. So, but then you also tend to make more mistakes as a beginner, and then you're taking out these little tiny stitches and you get really frustrated and you don't like sewing, you know. And when I've worked with beginners, I provide the free seam ripping experience. Like I will do all your seam ripping, I don't mind. But when I see that, I'm like, oh, no. You need to lengthen the seam line. Like 12 stitches per inch is kind of a standard. But in really fine machine sewing, they do a little bit shorter. Now I have a little tuck there, but I think that the chambray is pretty forgiving. I can probably get rid of that. See, we get rid of it? We did. I have a seam in my binding right there, so it's going to act funny anyway. Okay, so now I'm going to trim this edge. I'm going to clip it so that it wants to lay nice and flat, or approximately. You can tell like the piping would be really nice here, right? Because it would fill up that cord all the way around. I just didn't have any. There's just no way I can go to the fabric store that sells it right now. Let's see here, get it around. I'm going to trim this way down. Getting rid of that bulk will help the fabric in there lay a little nicer. I'm going to trim it from this side so I can see. Definitely going to, because of that stitch where I attached the cording, I definitely want to be able to stitch through that. That'll help release it as well. I do them closer together around the curves. It's really just the curves that are most important. You don't have to do too much on these really big, wide sweeping curves. It's just those really tight ones you want them close together. I'm going to definitely stitch or cut through that first stitch. And so see, that was my first pass. Remember when I thought my seam allowance was too narrow? So I definitely want to make sure I go through that, because this is my seam line, not this one here. In general, I like to use the base of my scissors as where I clip. If your scissors are really new or really sharp, you just be a little careful. But I feel like I can be a little more accurate. When I use the tips, I invariably snip through my seam. It's kind of counter to what you think, but doing this, like the angle, what your eyeballs are looking at it, you can go right through by accident. Okay. Let's press it. They probably can do a little wider there. Let's actually look at it before I press it. See if I want to correct anything now. Now you definitely want to use bias to make this, not straight cut binding trim. And that's so that it will lay as flat as possible. The bias makes it kind of just roll nicely. And hopefully you know what I mean by bias, meaning you cut this trim on a 45-degree angle to the length grain. Because if it weren't cut like that, this would, it'd be wavier. It just wouldn't lay right. That's pretty cute. It's still a little funky over here. I think I'm not going to worry about it. That curve, like the cording would be really nice, right? It would fill that up. But it looks pretty good. I'm going to iron that. Let's browse our instructions here. Okay, we're going to put the collar to the neck. And we're going to edge stitch it shut along the center back neck. And then these are going to remain raw on the front of your neck because they're going to get covered up with the facing. And then that whole assembly will be done, and we're on to sleeves already. Yeah, no, it turned out pretty cute. I was having trouble finding a binding, and then I was like, oh, I'll just use what I use on the pockets of those pants. Definitely want to make sure that you are pressing it to line up these edges here. And the reason you do that is usually an undercollar. While this one has a seam, the bias is one thing that's going to help like make the undercollar a little bit smaller so that your top collar is rolling over it. And I've seen people complain that a top collar and undercollar, why aren't they the same pattern piece? And that's why, is because you really need the undercollar to be just a little bit smaller. So when you draft that pattern piece, typically what you're doing is you're taking a little bit, like shaving off this perimeter edge between the neckline and all the way around, front to front. And you do it 0 here, and then you shave off about 1/8 of an inch max on the undercollar only. And then when you sew it together, you try and sew this still together at the proper seam allowance and then match this up. And so then this piece under here is a little bit smaller. So it's going to pull up a little bit like that. And it's going to make the top collar roll around. And it's kind of hard to see with this cording, but it's really common in collars, like the Archer has it. And the reason they're doing the bias is so you can do that, and it's just another way to do it. You don't want to put this on this pattern piece on the fold, because you don't want a big piece on the bias like that. It's just too, it'll get a little too crazy. You just want a little bit. Because I have made that mistake. Like, I didn't notice the piece was on the bias. I was like, well, are they trying to save fabric here? Why did I put it on the fold? And I was like, yeah, that worked. You know, it was fine. But it wasn't shaved exactly the same way around that perimeter edge. And then when next time I cut it out, I was like, oh, I'm so dumb. I didn't notice that the grain line was different on that undercollar, and there's two pieces, and then that made sense. Let me just iron this. Right. So this is our top collar. And come around like that. It's pretty stiff. I got interfacing finally, but I do feel like it's a little heavy, even though it says featherweight. Even I'm a little confused on interfacing. Like, I don't know about you, but when I think of a feather, I think kind of light, you know? And every time I get featherweight interfacing, I'm like, why isn't this lightweight, you know? Okay. So let's see here. Let's see. I'm going to pin this. I think this goes between, let's see, here's my shoulder. I'm going to line up the seam allowance. This, I'm going to use pins. Raw edges like that. Pretty sure it's like that. There's this weird little curve. Such a funny thing. The person who designed the original shawl collar, is this a shawl collar, or is this a notched? I think it's a notched collar. I could be wrong on my pattern terminology there. Like, the first person who ever did that, you know, was probably hundreds of years ago, a couple hundred years ago maybe now. It's pretty interesting how they came up with this. We haven't changed it much, but I do feel like we popularized it in the 20th century. This is so stiff. It's like cardboard. Okay, and so this goes to, so you want to line up the edge to that. Pretty sure that's how it works. And then when you put on your facing, the piping of the facing is going to line up to this as well. Looks pretty slick. Why am I getting a little, I'm getting a little fold under there. Just kind of working it out here. That undercollar hasn't been messed around with as much. It's still learning to be a buddy to the other guy. It's being a little rebellious. Okay, so let's see here. I'm going to back stitch for sure. Make my stitch length a little bit more normal. So I'll tell you, like, this is a good reason why I don't really like this really wide seam allowance. It's really hard to get down into here with that curve. Like, I already really want to clip this. Do you see how it's pulling? So I'm going to clip it a little prematurely. so I can get my neckline up to that edge right here. See how it's already spreading? How much it's spreading right there? Like that. Okay. Just sew right over my pins when they're perpendicular like that. And then I'm not going to catch in this top part that we pressed under and clipped. And then I'm pressing my back shoulders, or my shoulder seam to the back. And pull this out of the way. And now I can kind of see better my under collar and pull it up a little bit. Match that raw edge. Press the seam open of that under collar. I'm just feeling for any little like creases and folds underneath. We can always take some of those out if we get them, but hopefully we just won't get any to begin with. I think this has, the instructions have you do this in 2 steps, where you do just the under collar to the neckline. That would make it a little easier for that. But I find anytime I have to sew something delicate like this twice, delicate in that like getting those, you don't really want any of that stitching to show later on. I find stitching it twice has more of a danger of that happening. So I like to do this all at once. So I'm sewing the top collar and the under collar to the neckline at the same time, except on the back neck where I release the top collar, that little section that we pressed up. And these fingers, they're working hard. They're like pressing out the little wrinkles I can feel trying to happen underneath. All right, see how I did? You see that? Nice and clean back there still. Yeah, okay, so now let's clip this. I'm gonna trim this way down, so much fabric. Make sure, because this underside, see how it's like taut? That fabric can slip under, so when you're trimming, make sure you don't cut into your front of your pajamas. Let's trim a lot of this out. It's too bulky. We're going to trim this back neck as well. I'm going to clip it. Right up to that seam line. Can you see that? Sorry. That upper collar really wants to do its job, huh? I'm going to continue trimming the front right now. I'm going to decide if I want to trim on the back neck. Not as crucial. I don't feel like the bulk will be felt as much. Because it's going to be inside the collar. So now you just press that back neck up into there. And if you have this funny little thing happening right here, you just need to make sure that these clips line up right there. And right here. And now that will want to go in there under the collar. See that? Just like that. Magic. So I'm going to stitch this down. You could hand stitch this, but you know me. Why would I do that? So I will say, like, this stitching is not going to show. It's on the under collar, and you don't lift your collar up in your pajamas. I mean, unless you're Elvis or you're super cool or preppy at home. Hats off to you if you are. But I'm just going to top stitch this down. This is, you know, at the back of my neck on the top collar. No one's going to really see it. This one's going so much better than that last one, eh? There you go, nice and clean. Don't forget your label if you have a cute label. I really need a cute label, don't I? So let's look at our collar so far. That's pretty cute, huh? Okay, so where's my facing? Okay, so I think now we attach our piping, and then I hem my long edge there. So this is where I think my piping ends, and I'm actually going to look at that. I'm going to set myself up to succeed here. I'm going to lay this pattern piece down on here. I'm going to make sure that this this marked dot right here still lines up with that one. It's less important that it changes now because it's more important that it lines up with what we're going to sew it with. So why not just look, you know? So there's that notch that matches there. So I'm going to mark this where I want my piping to end, and I want it to end right here. It actually was pretty spot on. And I'm going to do it on this side too. You know what I mean? Like, why not? That dot is only for where the piping ends and where it lines up with this. So let's just make sure that it still is in the same spot. Otherwise, I'll be struggling to get my piping to line up with that. So see, I want my edge of my piping right there. So I kind of want to sew it like back here. Like that. All right, so now I'm going to finish the edge of my face. And you could serge this. They even actually have you roll hem it. I thought that was interesting. I think one thing, I'm going to see how these wear, but I might just stitch down my facing to my jammies. Because you remember how my other ones, they like wanted to like, I felt like I had to iron my facings on my pajamas, and that ain't happening. The thing is, I would, because I actually, I'm a weirdo in that I like doing dishes and I like ironing. I don't cook, but I like ironing and I like doing dishes. So I actually iron what I wear on the weekends. It's so pathetic. But you know, if I wanted to wear this on the weekend, I would iron a shirt. Okay, there we go. So I just hemmed that long edge there. That actually went really nicely. I was a little worried with that curve that it might fight me, but it's pretty satisfying. You don't want to forget doing this because once you put it to your pajamas, it'll just get a little harder to do. So you might as well do it when it's nice and easy right now, when it's not attached to anything else. Do it before or after you put your piping on. It doesn't really matter how big of a hem you do. You can do smaller. You can do a little bit bigger. This is not a part where the seam allowance or the hem allowance makes a difference for fitting or sewing together. This is just a finished edge. That's all. Oops. Alrighty. Okay. Where's my nice long piece of piping I made? Didn't I make an extra piece here? That one will work. Do I have another one? Yes! I can use the one that was too short for the collar and this other one. So perfect. So, see, I want this little edge to go like this straight in to there. And then I'm just going to stitch down to the 5/8 inch seam. I'm going to pivot Is that how I want that? Wait a minute. Maybe I want to go the other direction. Maybe I want to look at the directions. I think they go up. Oh, they just sew in and then they just pivot. Okay, yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, yeah. So I'm just going to leave out a tail like that, and then I'll fix it in a second. I'm going to do a little bit bigger than the seam I already attached, sewed the piping together with. So I kind of have a better idea. I'm going to really loosely turn this best I can. Now I can make it nice and tight and flat. Not too tight. Remember, my shrinkage is not built into this. And then you pull this up like this at a right angle. Let's sew this at the required seam allowance, and then it'll be a little bit more cooperative. Like that. The right angle, man. A little hard. Phew. Okay. Kind of had to ooch, ooch, ooch. I did that right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. I just had this crisis just for a second there that I did the wrong, I sewed on the wrong side because of the hem. I was like, wait a minute. But of course I did. I wouldn't have done it to the facing side, right? Okay, I have tons of this now. You guys are so quiet today. Are you guys busy sewing? What are you guys doing? I made myself a kind of an epic holiday list of things to sew this past weekend. I went and bought all the fabric. And I'm already starting on some things. So that feels pretty good. I don't typically sew a whole lot of holiday gifts. I just feel like my family's gotten so much stuff, homemade things from me over the years. They just don't need any more. I have one little tiny piece. I'll have to make more of that. Okay, so let's attach this to our jammy top. So I want to line this up at the seam, raw edges to raw edges, at the seam line and sew it there, right? So I'm going to get rid of a little of this interfacing because it's a little hard to see that I'm lined up to the raw edge there. And you don't want to line up the longest piece, you want to line up the smallest one so that you don't accidentally shortchange yourself and have raw edge showing on the outside of the garment. I may have to do a bigger seam allowance. I'm trying to get to that 5/8. It's so hard for me. Okay, trying to make my way up to it. Okay, so I'm just going to look at this now that I've got a bunch of that sewn. Move that out of my way so I don't drop it on the ground. And I'm going to start lining this up now so that I can kind of make any adjustments and kind of ease it in there if I need to. Ooh, you're sewing Christmas stockings for family pets. How fun! That's kind of fun, and those don't need to fit. That's nice. So I'm going to line these up right now like this. See that? We're going for that finish, that nice finish there. And I am going to pin that because this is non-negotiable. Definitely want that there. And now the rest of it, I need to ease in there, which I won't really have to. It looks like it's working really good. How many pets do you have, Carol? Are these your pets or other people's? You know what I saw? So there is a local quilt guild gathering quilts, like handmade quilts, and they're giving them to survivors of the campfire. And I saw that they had a distribution day yesterday, and all these people lined up, and they had 1,000 quilts, and they all went out the door to survivors, which I really think is cool. Like, at first, I don't know why, but I was thinking like things like craft supplies and stuff like that. I was like, people don't want that. They want their homes. They don't want stuff like that from me. And then I realized like having something like handmade on the bed that you're borrowing from someone right now or wherever you're sleeping, it just feels kind of nice. It feels more like, it feels homier. And having that sense of home is obviously really, really important. Okay, I'm noticing like one little issue here. Remember I trimmed this way down? I haven't trimmed this edge down. So I gotta be really careful. I should be hanging this off a little bit more. Or I should have just trimmed it. So let's see if I've gotten myself into some trouble by doing that. I'm on my next seam now, and so I am closing the rest of that in there to make it look nice. And so well, I really do need this edge to be a little bit further this way because I need it to go back like that. So I think I'm going to like take it out a little bit and pull. The interfacing probably made it shrink a little bit, so I'm going to try and ease a little bit out of there. Oh, you have 2 dogs. These are for other family. Aww. Yeah, I got a stocking for my mom's dog. He's not staying with us right now, but he'll be there for Christmas. A flip belt. Oh, cool. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, spandex is definitely interesting to sew. It's forgiving and also punishing. I use, I think that's what I was using. I didn't know it was called a flip belt until I joined a running club, briefly joined a running club, and they were all talking in Facebook about a flip belt. And I was like, ooh, what is this thing? And then I realized, oh, I use one of those, and it's like a really narrow, really stretchy fanny pack. And it's almost invisible under your clothes when you're a jogger. And I would put my phone in there and my keys so I could listen to a book or whatever. And my lip stuff, you know. And so I love that thing. Like, because I really didn't like having my phone on my arm. And having it in my pocket would make it get foggy, which is bad. I had my assistant Rayanne, hers would fail. I went through a phone or two because working out at the gym, her phone would get humid inside and then die. And they would say, oh, sorry, your warranty is void because you dropped it in water. And then she realized what was happening. It was that it was her sweat. It wouldn't actually get foggy in there. She couldn't see the fog. It was that she probably was creating humidity inside there. See, now I lost my pin. Remember I put my little like non-negotiable pin in there? I took it out by accident. That was non-negotiable. We already went over that. Okay, I'm just going to pin this again. Yeah, but they went through all the quilts, so they're looking for more. And I actually did make one of our little quilt kits yesterday. I had my last one was almost done, so I finished that up. And I was just going to bring it home. And I was like, oh, I can take this. I mean, it's small, but it's still like great for a little pet or a little kid or something, you know. So I'll bring that. And then I made some pillowcases. That's kind of homey. They're really cute. Like, I just picked whatever they had already. They're selling like little pillowcase kits that are wholesale pricing. And the pieces are cut out. All you have to do is sew it together. I was totally down for that. I'm like, oh, you already cut it out? Nice. I'm there. Okay, I'm not paying attention enough, and I think I'm getting into a little bit of trouble here. It was going so well until I stopped paying attention. Making sure I'm not getting wrinkles in my shirt. Because that can happen right here. This little curve. Remember that little curve is kind of funny. And I am making sure that this is going to now extend past. That's great. I may have to correct something else. I'm actually going to fold it down right now. and see if I need to correct anything on this side first. Yeah, see, I didn't really get that 90-degree angle right there. You see that? Let's see if we can get that, a little bit of that back. But at least the rest of it's secure now, you know. Okay, I'm gonna push this down in here like this. Take out a little bit of the stay stitching here. So I have a little bit more maneuverability, and I'm gonna drop this down a little bit more. So I'm kind of pulling it in there. I can see why you like sew it straight and then hoik it over. I get it better? I don't think so. Oh, a tiny bit better. I'm gonna leave it there. I had trimmed it so much that I don't think I can get much more in there. Okay, let's see the rest of it. So thick, right? All right, so let's clip into this neckline one more time. So now we have our facing on there. Make sure I don't clip into my shirt. Okay. Pretty cute. I like this little floral trim on here. It's pretty cute. See how my shoulder looks up here. My back stitch right there. And the way they have you finish this shoulder right here is stitching in the ditch from the outside. So I'll show you how to do that. So the trick with this is to make sure everything is laying nice and flat. It works best, causes the least amount of problem when it's all laying nice and flat. Ironing is key. Okay, I'm going to straighten out the back like that. So making sure your front is completely flat right here. Let the collar curve like that. And then line this edge up with the natural shoulder seam. Like that. Now I'm going to go just past it. You can serge that edge, and then just, if this was serged and this was serged, you can just line that up and stitch it down. Because we have that nice clean French seam, I'm going to get rid of a little bit of this so that I can kind of enclose that in there, hopefully. I probably cut that a little too much. And then I'm going to go just past this seam here like that. Kind of like our trick with binding. You want to go past it so that you know you're going to catch it from the outside. And then you're going to stitch in the ditch, which means you're going to pull the seam apart best you can. Pull this seam right here, the shoulder seam. Stretch it apart as far as possible and stitch right into that. And don't forget, your collar's going to cover this up when it's down. So don't stress too bad on it. If you get right into that ditch, it'll almost be invisible. The reason you want to get everything as flat as possible before you do it, you don't want any weird pulling on the outside. So you see that? You can see where I started, but remember, this is what's going to happen. Right? And now look, it's clean on the inside. Nice and clean. For our hard-wearing jammies. All right, let's do this other side here. I like to stitch on the side that has the stitching already showing, but we'll see if we can start up here. I feel like starting from the bottom and working your way up is a little bit easier overall. Okay, so I'm going to first line up my 90-degree, and that actually looks like it's going to go in perfectly. Maybe starting from the top will actually even help this. Let's see. You just never know. Sometimes I try something the opposite of what I think, and then that ends up being the way that works. It's kind of funny. I'm going to stitch on either side of this spot right here so that that piping doesn't move in there. And remember, I trimmed that edge, so let's line that up a little better. Like that. Yeah, there we go. I feel like I could do a little better. Like that. I'm going to butt it up against, and then I slit it up to where my seam allowance is proper. There we go. Ooh, so thick. Okay, and then this is my shoulder, so let's line that up too. And now I got my targets, my most important targets. And I have to get that onto there. I think I'm going to have to clip, don't you? Between the interfacing. Yeah, look at that. So much easier. Amazing what clipping can do, right? Okay, so I'm just a little nervous about stitching on the collar, so I'm going to be careful there. Time is it? 11. Okay, not too bad. Yeah, sorry, it's not the hour-long stream. I probably should have just done this in 2 parts, and I keep forgetting to do that. It seems like you guys are okay with that, and that works better for me too. So maybe I could do the sleeves on Saturday and some other little small thing. Especially because I think I'm getting a ton of texts from someone who is 16 and spamming me with texts right now. She's panicking about something. Don't worry, she's not hurt. I caught a glimpse of what it is. Okay, I'm not a terrible parent, I promise. Well, at least I hope not. We'll see, right? Okay, so this is a little bit tight. Let me see if I can get this in here. I don't really want to stretch that though. I did, you know, in fact, I'm not going to, because I did shorten my pajama top from the pattern. It's the only modification I did, I'm pretty sure. And I remember thinking that I didn't get the facing quite right when I cut it out. I think I need a bigger seam allowance there. Yep, I do. This 5/8 stuff, man, it really throws me off. Okay, get rid of the pins. Dang, it looks like 90 degrees. I'm not kidding when I look at it, and then that's what I get for 90 degrees. Like, look at that. Do you see how well that looks lined up in there? Like, that's my 2 pieces of piping butted up. There, I'll do this so you can see. See that? And that's what it looks like. So you might want to overlap it a little bit more, or push it down onto the body a little bit more and then make your right turn. You might get a better result than that. me do your experimenting for you. Ooh, I think I might have gone through my seam right there. Sometimes, you know, when you have that resistance, because it's so thick, and then you squeeze a little too hard, I better double check that spot. Where was that? Right here. Oh, I didn't, but I'm still gonna, oh yeah, I think I did. I'm gonna make sure. Of course that's near my right angle, so now I'm gonna lose even more of it. There we go. Okay. Alrighty. So I think I'll attach the shoulder facing to the shoulder, the facing to the shoulder seam, and then I'll call it a day, and we'll put on set in sleeves. Oh, nice, Lynn. I love making the archer. It's one of my favorite things to make. It's one of my, I feel like making those kinds of button-up shirts were some of my very first like sewing garment projects. I really fell in love with like stitching. I don't know what it is. I just like the top stitching and like the straight seams. Like it looks like it's a hard project, and there's definitely some tricky elements like that collar stand and the collar. I know that that's kind of tricky, and the shirt, the cuffs. But once you kind of get those, it's like such a rewarding project. So anyway, I will finish this right here, this little facing at the shoulder right here. And then we'll put the sleeves on and do the shoulder seams, or the side seams and the hems on Saturday. But what I'm thinking is we'll really focus on set in sleeves, like sewing set in sleeves on Saturday, because I know I get a lot of questions about that. And I know Ida just did that. How'd yours go, Ida? Are you still here? Because I know you were, wasn't it you that messaged me and you were just about to put on your set in sleeves? So that's pretty cool. And Christy just finished her first pair of ginger jeans. That's pretty exciting. Christy, that little like mishap you had with those, I know, just set those aside. You come back and fix them one day. Yeah, you got this, Lynn. You got it. I have a video on sewing the archer. You can check it out, because I do have a couple of tricks on how I do it so that I don't have to worry about certain aspects of that. So you might try checking that out if you haven't. And maybe just fast forward to where the collar is at once you see that happening. I think the fabric is like a, just so you can notice it, is like a creamy color with yellow flowers on it, big yellow flowers. So that might help you recognize the video. Okay. I have an archer sitting right here ready to sew. I've been thinking about just sewing it, and then I was like, maybe I should just sew it on a video again, but just sew it through, you know, without the chit chat, me taking it, making it take longer. Yeah, good, Ida, I'm glad. All right, I'm going to. So I think, let's see. I'm going to do one, I'm going to do one little thing. So one little tip, if you, you know, I'm doing a little shortcut by folding that down when I attach it to the neck, but let me show you another way that actually might give you a better, I'm hoping, let's see, might give you a better finish. So leave that open, sew it down, again, by leaving it up. And then I'll wrap it around the shoulder seam allowances. Instead of doing that trimming I just did again, because that's actually not ideal. So I can wrap this around this seam, this neck seam right there like that. Wait a minute. Oh, that's what happened. I was like, say, something happened there. Okay, I just caught my, I wasn't paying attention when I did that. I caught my shoulder seam in there. I always have to make it complicated right at the last second, don't I? Oh, and then I'm going to get my warp. Wait, do I have a tuck? Yeah, I do have a tuck. There it is. See that? Okay. Release. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of those little threads. There we go. Okay, so then you can wrap it around. Like if I hadn't trimmed this right there, it'd be a little easier. Wrap it around the shoulder seam allowance to kind of tuck it in there like that. But let me sew this neckline seam a little better now because I had to take out a little tiny bit. So many threads in there now. Case that in there. Stitch it down on the shoulder like this. This fabric is so unforgiving. Anytime I pull out a little seam, you know, when you have the warp and the weft, two different colors, it's almost like you're scarring the fabric once you penetrate it with your needle. And like this is forgiving more than say like iridescent taffeta. That definitely leaves like the warp or the weft is going to show up more because you've just perforated the fabric. And sometimes your needle's not like moving the yarns of the fabric. It's not moving them aside and making room for the needle to go through. It's actually piercing it and sometimes cutting the little fibers of your fabric. That is why you use a ballpoint needle in knit fabrics, because if you were to pierce the fibers of your knit fabric, you can create a run like in stockings. And so that's why you use a ballpoint needle, because it's going to try and aid pushing the fibers aside from, you know, while your needle's going into the fabric. And then that way you're hopefully not nicking those fibers and creating a run. But, you know, it still happens in wovens as well. It's just not as catastrophic. Because if you know, we've all gotten those cheap knits from the store and we get a little run from the hem going up, or maybe we nicked it somewhere and then you get a run. Same idea, you know. Okay, so here is my shoulder seam right there. I'm going to pull it apart and do the stitch in the ditch. Hope that's turned back enough. I don't think it is. Yeah, the little edge, I felt it come up. There we go. All right, let's see if I caught it. I'm not sure I actually caught that whole thing. May not have been turned back enough. It looks like I did. Perfect. There we go. Nice and clean finished. Let's see. It's a scout colored jammy top. So I think I'm going to see how it wears, but I just might stitch down my facing. This edge right here to the jammy, so it doesn't flip out. What do you guys think? I'm making it look super fiddly right now, aren't I? There we go. Maybe if I line up my side seams. There we go. I'm getting a little obsessive. I wanted to lay down. I'm like, okay. But I try and do it so it's relaxed when it does it, because I can actually find issues if I'm like forcing something, but this looks pretty good. it's doing this because the seam allowance is so wide. There we go. Not bad, not bad. Nice clean finished collar. Once I press this, it'll look pretty sharp. That floral trim really makes it look like jammies, doesn't it? All right, well, so Saturday we'll come back at 11 a.m. Pacific, and we will put on the cuffs to the sleeves where it has this little trim as well. We'll set in the sleeves and do the side seams and the hems, all with French seams. So if you are gonna put set on sleeves, like a smooth cap sleeve into a garment soon, tune in, because the skills we're going to use for that are applicable to other set-in sleeves. And by set-in sleeve, I just mean like it's a traditional sleeve cap where you have to ease in the excess fabric of the cap into the armhole. That's totally normal, that your your sleeve is longer for the armhole, and so I'll show you how to set that in foolproof, really easy, and it'll look really nice. Aw, thank you. Thanks, Carol. Thanks, Brooke. Yeah, I think that looks really cute. And let's see them with my, do you think it goes with my plaid jammy bottoms? Is it kind of a stretch? Super cozy, right? I needed new jammies. The trick is going to be me going home and getting rid of some of the old things I'm wearing, because I just, I don't really need so many extra jammies. And there's some jammies I just shouldn't be wearing anymore, but they're comfortable. So, we keep them around. And I tend to like to wear black pants, so I don't technically look like I'm wearing jammies at 5 o'clock. But, everybody knows that. So, all right, guys. Well, I'm Sarah. Thanks for coming. And thanks, guys. I appreciate it. And I hope to see you Saturday at 11. I wasn't planning on streaming this Saturday, but I'm going to, because I've already got the project all set. And that's like most of the work that I'd have to do to set up a whole nother project. And it would be nice to just kind of delve into like putting in the set-in sleeves, and then I'll see if I have anything else kicking around that we can sew together. Maybe we do a little bit of my Archer or something. So I always say these things and then I forget what I've said. You guys I need a secretary, a stream secretary that is like, okay, these are the things you promised, and we're going to hold you to those things, because I really love following through. And it's like when I meet people, I will have this really great conversation with them and then totally forget everything we talked about because I'm so overwhelmed because I'm at a show or something. And if I usually am really good at write notes, and then I'll get home and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot I had that great conversation with that person. I'm so glad I wrote this down. So you're welcome, Carol. So thanks, guys. Thanks for coming. And I hope you're staying warm and cozy wherever you are. And I will see you on Saturday, 11 a.m. Pacific. And have a great rest of your week. Take care.